continue from the point where we had left class. The last point we had discussed about was the evolution of the fetus. Now the next is about the process of fertilization as mentioned in Sushruta and the description. गृहीत गर्भाणां मार्तवाहानां स्वसां वर्त्मानि अवरुध्यन्ते गर्भेण तस्मात् गृहीत गर्भाणां मार्तवं न दृश्यते ततः तदधः प्रतिहतम् ऊर्ध्वम् आगतम् अपरं च उपचीयमानम् अपरा इत्यभिधीयते शेषं च ऊर्ध्वतरम् आगतं पयोधरौ अभिप्रतिपद्यते तस्मात् गर्भिण्याः पीनोन्नतपयोधराः भवन्ति. Now the concept of the menstrual flow being blocked after the fertilization, what Sushruta says is there is a direct description that because the fetus is embedded, that blocks the flow of the menstrual blood, and the same, that menstrual blood which was blocked will result in the formation of the placenta, and another component of the same would be producing the milk, or it helps in the development of the breast, and then the breast milk is formed during the course of the pregnancy. Now, from the current physiology point of view, the whole changes of these are related to the hormones. In a normal menstrual cycle, you will have the progesterone estrogen in a cyclical fashion, so which raises up till the middle of the cycle and then it gets reduced. In case of a conceived condition, once the conception has occurred, the hormones, they would have a gradually progressive raising level, and because of the raising level of these hormones, we say that the menstruation is blocked, there will be no more further ovulation and menstruation, and then gradually the same also hormones are responsible for the this development of the breast and the milk as such, and individual hormones, their responsibilities are now well described. Basically, I don't find any difference in the perception. Though Sushruta has mentioned there is a very simple direct description of the menstrual blood resulting in the formation of the placenta and then the milk production, the intermediary changes like the hormones and so on, they are not mentioned in Sushruta, whereas now we have more detailed description of that hormonal changes and then the same consequences. So I don't find a significant difference in the basic issue. The description in Sushruta is very simple, straightforward. Now you have more detailed description which gives you many opportunities for intervention and so on. Then the next is about the development of the fetus. So different organs of the fetus, according to Sushruta, the different organs are produced from a component of the body, and like each of the dhatu would be resulting in the formation of certain of the organs, and the linkage between a type of the dhatu and the organ is discussed. From the current embryology point of view, the basic idea is about the three germinal cell layers, ectoderm, endoderm and mesoderm. And from the ectoderm, you have the nerve cells and the epithelial cells, endoderm, the gastrointestinal tract cells, and then the mesoderm from the connective tissues as such. This is how the issue is different, looks different. The issue looks to be different, but ultimately the concept is almost similar. But what we have now is we have more advantage of maybe more advanced information about the duration of development of these organs, different organs, when that organs would be developed and how the organs are developed, and in between we have the opportunity of seeing the abnormalities of the growth of individual organ, which the technology has helped, whereas Sushruta didn't have that technology, but Sushruta gives a straightforward description of linkage of a specific dhatu to a specific organ, and this has something to do with the function of the organ later on, and it looks justified. But all that what I would say is the view of this development embryology of Sushruta and the current embryology, the whole view and perception are different, but ultimately it comes to the same point. It looks like there is a huge gap between these two, but I don't say that there is a gap as such, but the views are different. The way you look at it is different. Sushruta has looked at it, the development of an individual organ in relation to the function, and hence the consequence relation with the specific tissues or dhatus. Whereas now the whole embryological study is based upon the ability to locate the organ, identify the organ, and maybe the growth of the organ sequentially is now better studied with the technology. Now, anyway, with this perception, if we go into these details of individual organ developments of Sushruta, Garbhasya Yakrit Plihano Shonitajo, Yakrit and Pliha are produced from the Rakta Dhatu, Shonita Dhatu. As far as the current embryology is concerned, from the endoderm formation, a hepatic specification, a mass of the tissue which can be considered as a liver, that's located or identified by 10th week. And by 30th week, the whole organ of the liver is developed in between that sequential images. So I will not go into much of the details like the liver bud growth occurs, and then further you will be able to see by 30th week the whole issue development is seen. Similarly, Shonisa Prabhavaha Pusaha. Sushruta says the form of the Shonisa blood would be resulting in the formation of Pusa. That's the lungs are formed from the form of the Shonita. Of course, again, from the current point of view, that's not the issue. The development is seen in the form of the individual structures. It starts as a single tube in the beginning of trachea, and which is seen by around 4th to 7th week, and then the alveolar formation would be seen by about 36 weeks, and from there onwards, after the delivery, till delivery, the lungs are not functioning in the form of the same as that of the adult. Once the delivery occurs, the lungs would have switch on to a different sort of the blood supply and then the functions also. In the embryonic life, though the structures are formed, they do not have that respiratory functions. Only after the delivery, they are exposed to the oxygen, and the oxygen is directly exchanged at that level. Even the circulation, blood supply also would be in a different manner. The pulmonary vessels would be relatively less functioning from the in the embryonic life. Only in the adult life, the whole circulation switches over to the pulmonary circulation as such. Similarly, Shonsa Kitta Prabhava Undukaha, the development of the gastrointestinal tract. Now, according to Sushruta, the Unduka, that's Unduka is the circular or globular portion of the gastrointestinal tract, which we now identify as a cecum. Now, whether it's justified or not, whether Unduka has to be identified as a cecum or colon, again, question mark. So, we will not go into that kind of an argument. Maybe cecum, so we will accept that. That's produced through the Shonisa Kitta, the solid component of the blood. Now, from the current point of view, the gastrointestinal tract identity is formed once the folds of the primary membranes, the ectoderm and endoderm, mesoderm, they have get folded, and then the gut canal is formed, and the gut canal would be having that deviations or the structural deviations, modifications, which will be giving you the identity of the organ area of the mouth or pharyngeal gut, then the portion of the esophagus, then of course the lungs, but also would be developed in connection with the same, and the structure of the stomach and duodenojejunal features of the duodenojejunal and the gut, the colon structures. Identity of these would be formed by about 8th week as such. Then the further components of the gastrointestinal tract mentioned by Sushruta is Asajah Shleshmanaschapi Prasada Paromatah Stam Pachyamanam Piktena Vaishchapi Anudhavati Tato Asya Antrani Jayante Gudam Bastichadeshanaha Udare Pachyamanam Atmanad Raktam Raktasarvata Kafashonisamamsanam Sarat Jihva Prajayate Yathartham Ushmanayukto Vayu Srotam Sidarayeta अनुप्रविश्य पिषितं पेशीः विभजते ततः मेघसः स्नेहमादाय स्नायुत्वम् आप्नुयात् शिराणां तु मृदुपाकः स्नायूनां च तसखरः आशयाभ्यासयोगेन करोति आशयसम्भवम्. Now the structures of the gastrointestinal tract, like the mouth and then the intestines, the rectum and the colon also are formed gradually by the combination of rakta and the kapha, the prasada portion, the acceptable or bioassimilable portions of the rakta and the kapha would result in the formation of gastrointestinal tract. Now we attribute it to the endodermal layers. Now, again, I am not going to equating this, but we look at the way you look at it is something different. Then the lumen in these structures, like gastrointestinal tract would have a lumen. Now we attribute it to the folding of the membranes, whereas Sushil says it's due to the Vayu Mahabhuta moving across that tissue will be resulting in the formation of the lumen there. And so Srotam Sidare Chetartam Ushmanayutta, Vayu with the Pitta would be producing that lumen as it passes through. Then when the same the connective tissues, the muscular tissues are affected, or muscular tissues are impacted by the Vayu and the Kapha, that produces either Peshi, the muscular structures. Again, the muscular structures would be again either Snayu, which are firm and hard structures. Of course, what is Snayu, what is Peshi, Kandara, we will be discussing in the coming chapters in detail. So for the present, we will take it as way. The firm muscular structures, they are the Snayu. Relatively soft and wider structures, muscular structures are the Peshi. And they add that with the Medas and the Sneha, it produces the structures of the muscles, the vessels, blood vessels, and the other tendons and so on. Now we attribute these structures to the mesodermal development. From the mesoderm, you have all that connective tissues developing, and those are considered to be the product of Vayu, Kapha, and Medas. And based upon their locations, the different organs are formed. Now, of course, from the current embryology point of view, what we study would be again the time of development of these organs. With the gastrointestinal tract, by 27 days, that simple primary lumen is formed, and by about 50 days, the stomach structure is seen. By 12 weeks, all the other structures, like the stomach, its relationship with the pancreas, the liver, and all these accessory structures are formed by 12th weeks as such. 12th week as such. So gastrointestinal tract would have a resemblance to that of the adult anatomy by around 12 weeks of the pregnancy. Then the next is the vrukka. Ratamela prasada vrukka, the formation of the vrukka or the kidney. Now again there is a lot of controversy issue about whether Shashula has described the functions of the vrukka as kidney, or the kidney functions, renal functions are attributed to the vrukka or not. Vrukka are considered to be medodhatu. Of course, those issues we will be discussing more in detail later on. But irrespective of that, when we have discussed about the medodhatu, I have related to that part. The medodhatu would be also having the function of the fluid and electrolyte balance, and that part, that component is related to the vrukka, and hence it's obviously that of the kidney structures formed. And the kidney is formed from the current anatomy point of view, current embryology point of view, by the clubbing of mesonephric tubes. Initially there will be scattered mesonephrons. The tubes are formed, and these tubes get aggregated by 4th week, and then they would have a connecting system. Now this is a very interesting issue. Connecting system forms in a different area, and the mesonephrons, they are formed as a different mass. They tend to get related to each other by about 4th week. Till then you have that mesonephric duct as such, and the mesonephric mass tube separate, and then they get collected together, and then initially the development starts at the pelvic area, and then gradually it ascends up during the development from the pelvic area to the lumbar area, and by around 12th week the structures, the detailed structures like renal, pelvis, cortex, they are made out in the fetus as such. Then mamsa kapameda prasada vrishana, the testicular development. Now according to Sushruta, it is produced to rakta and the mamsa and kapha, combination of these. From the current point of view, we know that the testicles are formed again by the nephrons, tubular structures, which are formed, mass of these, which are formed in the lumbar area, and then they gradually descend down directed by the gubernaculum, into the scrotum. The process, they are directed to the through the vaginal process, which is later will be developed into the tunica vaginalis. So that's a different issue, interesting issue. Kidney ascends up from the pelvis to the lumbar area. The testis descends down from the pelvic area into the testicles during the development course of the development, and we give that in the embryology, we give stress on that part, that component, than really which is the real original tissue. Of course, the testicles are also products of the new mesoderm origin. From the mesodermal structures, they are produced as such. Then the hridaya, shonita kapha prasadajam hridaya, yadashraya hidhamanyah pranamaha, tasya adho vamata priha pupusascha, dakshinato yakrat klomacha, तद्विशेषेण चेतनास्थानम् अतः तस्मिन् तमसावृते सर्वप्राणिनः स्वपन्ति भवन्ति चात्र पुण्डरीकेण सदृशं हृदयं स्यात् अधोमुखं जागृतः तद्विकसति स्वपदश्च निपीडति. The formation of the hridaya. Now hridaya obviously, but Sushruta has, there are lot of issues, like somebody says hridaya can be compared to brain and so on. I don't feel that kind of a confusion. Sushruta has very clearly described the anatomical relationship of the hridaya heart. Like they are connected to the pranavaha dhamanyah, the major vessels like aorta, they are connected to the hridaya. And adhovamata priha, on the inferior surface of the hridaya, you have the priha, the liver, spleen, as well as the pupusa, the lungs also will be covering the same area, the heart as such. Dakshinato yakrita klomacha, on the right side it's the liver and the cloma, pancreatic structures possibly. And according to Ayurveda, hridaya is chetana sthana, the life activity is located in hridaya. From the current physiology point of view, we always attribute these intellectual functions and the life activities to the nerves or the brain as such, nervous system as such. Now again, whether who is right, who is wrong, that's a different issue. But throughout the basic human tendency to say, like whenever you identify yourselves, whenever you speak of your emotions, you always say heart as the seat of the emotions. You welcome somebody, whenever you say like heartily welcome, you feel that you are, whenever you welcome someone, you always use the word like heartily welcome, or you always say heartfelt feelings, like you do not use the word brain-felt feelings. So conventionally, even now, we still have a notion that the chetana or the intellectual activity, the life, is located in the heart. But neurologically, of course, it's always related to the brain. Now, we will not go into that again, controversy to a great extent. But Sushruta attributes the sleep, the seat of the sleep, to the heart. Tasmin tamasavrte sarva praninaha swabhanti. When the tamoguna increases in the heart, it results in the formation of the sleep, or in the feeling of the sleep. And this shape of the heart would be changed when you are awakened and when you go asleep. Pundarikena sadrisham hridayam syat adhomukam. Jagratastadvikati swapakascha nimilati. The resemblance of the heart to a lotus bud, like aorta, and then it carries that the lotus as a curved structure. That kind of a relationship, similar to the structure, is described about the heart, and that's a very perfect description. And the only issue of difference of opinion is whether the sleep is attributed to the heart or not. Now we have identified the sleeping center in the brain and awakening center. I will come to that part. Anyway, embryological point of view, development of the heart is another major milestone in the development of the embryology, and it's also one of the important parameters of assessment of the growth of the fetus, the fetal heart sounds and assessment of this as such, and the actually identification of a cardiogenic field is seen by about 4th week of gestation. And by about 9th week of gestation, you can see the structures of the septum and all that internal structures of the heart can be identified with ultrasonography, and that's one of the important issues as such. Then of course, alright. Now now during this, I would like to refer to one of these statements mentioned in the previous chapter. Like in Sushruta, we have an idea like the components of the body, the fetus, they are produced from the maternal component, paternal component, as well as the nourishment, and then there is something called as the self, Atma, and Sattva, the Manas. Now, among them, the quite important is the hard structures like Kesha, Shmashu, Loma, Asti, Nakadanta, Sirasnai, Dhumani, Reta, Prabhutini, Stirani, Pitrajani. Now, these are the structures which we consider as a mesodermal origin, primarily, and the hard structures are produced from the paternal component. Mamsa Shoni, the Mego, Manja, Hirnabi, Akrakuleha, Antraprabhuti, Muduni, Matrajani. The softer structures like the Mamsa, Shoni, the Rakta, Medas, etc., are produced by the maternal component. In the current genetics, this kind of idea is not at all identified, like whether the maternal component would be forming a separate organ or not is not true. It's not studied, rather that kind of an issue is not studied. But interestingly, whenever you look at the diseases related to the X and the Y genes, the sex related genes, X genes are related to the female component, Y genes are the male component. The major identified diseases linked X-linked genetic disorders are like the color blindness, hemophilia, Duchenne muscular atrophy, and agammaglobulinemia, Alport syndrome, which is presented with the structures of the muscles, abnormal muscles. Whereas Y-linked genes related to Alzheimer's disease, hypertrichosis, where there will be a lot of hairs formed, toes webbed, and then Charcot-Marie tooth disease, where there is again abnormality of the bone and the tooth is the asset. Now, interesting point is that the Y-linked genetic disorders, they are more presented with the hairs, bones, and other structures. X-linked genes are related to the softer structures like the muscles, blood. So whatever Sushruta has said, it gives you some idea, but that kind of a relationship is not really described. Whereas now parentage study is done by identification of the genes as such, not by any single organ. We do not depend upon any single structure of the body, like whether it's the heart or the muscles or the hairs, so on. Any structure can be used, any component of the body tissue can be used for study of the genetic genes of the paternity, in the paternity stage, parentage studies as a test done, which also has a legal issue, like how to identify the parent, etc. Any tissue can be seen. Usually hairs are often preferred because those structures do not harm blood or any other component. So the idea like a specific organ produced by a parental gene or the maternal gene or paternal gene, it has to be looked at a different way in the current genetics. In the current genetics, you do not have that kind of a perception. As such, as per the current knowledge, according to the current knowledge, the genetic distribution in every tissue is the same. But when it comes to the question of linked genetic disorders, you have almost a similar issue as that of what's mentioned in Sushruta. So, what I would like to stress upon is, I am not saying that who is right or who is wrong, but the point is, current genetics, there has to be a different sort of view. You need to add a different sort of view and then study further whether that kind of a relationship between the different organs and the genetics exists or not. Now, in the present day situation, we do not have that kind of a study done. But that kind of a study is possible. That kind of a study is done with certain other characters of the body, like the color of the eyes. Now, as far as the color of the eyes, you have that detailed study of the parentage, how the color of the eyes of the parents would be affecting the color of the child, and with that different percentages also. This kind of a study is done. Probably, if such a study, similar study is extended to the formation of different organs, where we may have some more clue to say whether Sushruta's perceptions were correct or not. Anyway, that's one part. Now again, coming back to the issue of the sleep. Nidranu Vaishnavim Patmanam Upadishanti Sa Swabhavataya Sarvapranina Abhipsprishati Tatra Yada Samnyavahani Strotamsi Tamo Bhuistah Shleshmana Pratipadyate Tada Tamsi Nama Nidra Sambhavati Anavabhutini Sa Pralaya Kale Tamo Bhuistanam Ahastu Nishatsu Bhavati Rajo Bhuistanam Animittam Sattva Bhuistanam Artharatre क्षीणश्लेष्माणाम् अनिलबहुलानां मनःशरीराभितापदां तनैव सा वैकारिकी भवति. The sleep as such is considered as a divine issue, something related to the divine and the component of divinity which need to be replenished. That papmanam, papma is sin in the sense which need to be washed out. So the strain of the body, which is a part of the divine growth, is considered as a nidra. Now nidra will be affecting the sensory component of the body, and when it is extensive, when it becomes extensive, then it's also called as what we call as the death, where it is irreversible. So death is defined to a certain extent, not exactly the same, but to a certain extent, one component or one sort of the description of the death is a irreversible sleep. Now this is again, it's not a complete description about death. From Indian philosophy, you have lots of other issues described, but one of that description is a irreversible sleep. So it is something like a irreversible sleep as such, and that's what's called as the pralaya, where there is extensive tamoguna and it results in samyama. Some maybe when it is slightly reversible, you may call it as coma. With when it can be reversed with very hard stimuli, then it can be coma. So grades of that impaired consciousness, they are compared to that of the nidra. But when there is an involvement of the kapha dhatu and tamasa guna, it becomes a pralaya kala, pralaya kala. So these are the abnormal formations of the sleep. Now, other way, in a normal sleep pattern, depending upon the moderate increase in the rajas, tamas and the sattva guna, the pattern of the sleep would be changing. In the persons who have tamoguna prominence, they tend to sleep both during day and night. They tend to sleep more and sleepish personality. Whereas if there is a rajoguna, then they get to sleep without any specific reason. Anytime they may get to sleep anytime without any specific time interval as such. So irregular sleepers. Then sattva-bhuistanam ardharatre. In the sattva-guna, they tend to sleep at night and late at night and only at that night. That's the specific time interval. Persons who have kapha-kshaya, that's kshinashleshmanam anilabahulanam, or manasharira abhisapota, those who have some psychological stress, or those who have a kapha-kshaya or vata-vruddhi, then either they may not sleep or the sleep may be reduced or disturbed. So sleep disorders may occur. From the current point of view, we attribute the sleep and awakening to the specific centers in the brain. So, and the mechanism of the sleep with the different neurotransmitters of dopamine and cholinergic groups, these, and as well as GABA, the gamma aminobutyric acid. The relationship with this sleep and these enzymes are now known, and we have that kind of approach where a sleep center can be stimulated and sleep can be induced, or you have plenty of drugs which can manipulate these neurotransmitters and either induce the sleep or awaken the sleep is possible. So, though Sushruta has claimed as a heart and the Hridaya as the Chetanasthana and the sleep also is attributed to the heart as such. Now you have that very objective ability and objective evidence that sleep can be regulated, sleep can be induced, and sleep can be prevented or awakened by the specific functions of the brain and the specific structures of the brain. So I will not go beyond that. So, but still, we have to accept the other part, like Hridayam Chetanasthanam Muktam Sushruti-dehinam Tamo Chetasmin tu Nidra Vishati-dehinam. Nidra hetuhu tamas-sattvam bhudane heturuchyate swabhava eva hetur-gariyan parikirtate. Now, Sushruta says like Hridayam Chetanasthanam, again repeats the Chetanasthana is the Hridaya, and all that like patterns of the sleep are attributed to the Hridaya. Now, though we have the controversy of whether the brain as such as the center of the sleep and the heart as the center of the sleep, we still have the evidence that the functions of the heart would be changing according to the status of awakening or the sleep. Probably by looking at that change in the functioning, see when you get into sleep, heart rate reduces, then the blood pressure reduces, contractility of the heart reduces, and based upon that, probably Sushruta might have considered that there is a sankocha, the heart gets constricted as per Sushruta, and then there will be the Rajoguna, Tamaguna produced to aggravated that. So we will stop at that point. I will not go into that compromising issue. It's not the question of compromising. This is the way you look at the issue, and we have a different perceptions, different views about the sleep, and both the views have certain validity. From the current view, you have the technology where you can interfere, you can modulate, whereas from Sushra's point of view, all that what you can is subjective perception of the sleep as such. With that, we will stop at that point. Then Purudehan Bhutastu Bhutatma Swavata Prabhu Rajo Yuktena Mansa Drinati Arthan Shubha Shubhanam. Then the dreams produced during the sleep, this again is due to the Purojanma according to Sushila. The impact or any of those memories carried from the previous birth, they can be producing the pattern of the sleep as such. And whereas now we attribute the dreams to the current experience. Now, Sushruta has mentioned about the abnormalities of the sleep, but and we say that the abnormality of the sleep is due to that hormonal changes ultimately, and the sleep can modify that. But if you go into the sleep deprivation, if at all you look at the other way, if at all you prevent anybody from preventing the sleep, regular sleep is prevented, deprived. What happens? Ultimately, say a continuous deprivation of the sleep in the long term would be producing the changes in the heart. There will be vascular calcification, incidence of cardiac complications like atherosclerosis, hypertension, arrhythmia, and chronic heart disease or coronary heart disease. All of them are enhanced due to the sleep deprivation. The important issue, interesting issue, when we say Sushruta Hridaya Chetana Sthana and the sleep is attributed to the Hridaya, of course, we do not have any objective evidence from the current physiology point of view. We attribute it to the sleeping centers, awakening centers, and all that issue. But when it is a question of sleep deprivation, if somebody is deprived from the sleep for a long duration, it results in the cardiac complications through many these channels. It affects the endothelial functions of the vessels. Sleep deprivation affects the metabolic activity. It also affects the autonomic nervous system activation. The immunity is impaired, and it is proved. Now, this is a very proved entity, like a persistent sleep deprivation will be directly responsible to the cardiac complications. So, again, I will not say that whatever has been proved, but there is a indirect evidence of whatever Sushruta has mentioned. So, you cannot just throw out that theory because you have objective evidence. Say that you throw out that theory, don't accept. That's not the issue. We will have to look at the issue as they are available and try to get the benefit of both the concepts wherever there is a necessity. That's all the point. Then karananam tu vaikalya tamasa api pravartate asvavannapi bhutatma prasupta iva chiptyate. There could be a situation where a person may not be really sleeping, but it is a virtually sleeping like situation when the indriyas or sensory organs are not functioning, and that's what we call as absenteeism. Absenteeism is a very common issue, particularly when you sit in the classes. Many times you go blank, you do not hear anything, but you keep the eyes open. So that kind of a situation is possible due to the karananam vaikalya, due to the impairment of your sensory organ systems. सर्वरसुश्च दिवास्वापः प्रतिषिद्धः अन्यत्र ग्रीष्मात् प्रतिषिद्धेष्वपि बालवृद्धस्त्री कर्षित क्षत क्षीण मध्य नित्ययान वाहन अध्वकर्म परिश्रान्तानाम् अभुक्तवतां मेधस्वेदकफरसरक्त क्षीणानाम् अजीर्णीनां च मुहूर्तं निद्रा स्वपनम् अप्रतिषिद्धम्. In general, sleeping during the daytime is unhealthy. It should be prevented, except in Grishma Ritu, very hot seasons. For a moment, muhurtam, for not more than half an hour or 45 minutes. Muhurta is around 45 minutes, not more than 45 minutes. You may sleep in the daytime. Or sleep in the daytime sleep can be suggested in extreme young age, old as well as old age. Bala, Vruddha, Stree, Karshita, Kshatakshina, those who have some physical impairment, or those who are alcoholics, those who tend to move a lot on the vehicles, or those who are strainful, having a strainful activity, stressful activity, or without food. See, daytime sleep should be without food, abhuktavata, not after food. And those who have impairment of Megha, Sweda, Kapha, Rasakta, dhatus. In these conditions, daytime sleep for a muhurta kala, for 45 minutes, less than 45 minutes is justified. It is an absolutely correct advice. Then ratravapi jagaritatam jagarita kalat ardham ishyate divasvavanam. Suppose if you have to lose sleep at night time, could not sleep at night due to some reasons, then in the daytime, those who do the night duties, in the daytime, you may sleep for half of the time of the sleep which was lost in the previous night. Suppose you have not slept for 4 hours in the previous night, then you may sleep at a daytime for 2 hours. So this is another proper advice. Vikriti divaswapo nama. Now, a continuous persistent sleeping during the daytime is a vikriti, it's a disease, other than those exceptions. तत्र स्वप्नम् अधर्मः सर्वदोषप्रकोपश्च तत्प्रकोपाच्च कास श्वास प्रतिश्याय शिरो गौरव अंगमग्ल अरोचक ज्वर अग्निदौर्बल्यानि भवन्ति. The daytime sleeping can result in a impairment of all the doshas, and it also is a sinful activity, and it can produce a series of disorders like kasa shwasa pratishyaya etc. Then ratra jagaritatam vatapitta nimittaha ta eva upadravaha bhavanti. Those who do not sleep at night also, to keep awake at night also, can result in the diseases of vataja and pittaja varieties. Tasmat na jagritaya pratro diva swapnancha varte jnatva doshakara veto buddha swapnam vitam chareta arodha sumana hi evam balavarnanvito vrushaha nachi sthula krasha shriman naro jivet samashratam. So ideally you should not sleep during the daytime, and the night sleep should not be avoided. And if you maintain a proper cycle of the sleep, it helps in prevention of the diseases, it keeps your mind fresh, and the physical strength of the body also will be enhanced, sexual ability will also be enhanced, and you will not become too obese or too lean, and your life extension can be increased up to 100 years. Nidra satmikrita yestu ratrau yadiva दिवा रात्रौ च ये नित्यं स्वप्नजागरणोचिताः न तेषां स्वपतां दोषाः जागृतां वापि जायते. Suppose you have conditioned your body to the sleep at night, sleep at daytime, and awakening at night, like those who are on regular night duties or such occupations which requires regular awakening night, may be having this satmikarana, adaptation. So your body can get adapted to that, and in such conditions it may not result in the diseases like. Then nidranasha anilat pittat manassapat kshayadapi sambhavati abhigataccha pratyanikihi prashamyati. Nidranashe abhyanga yogaha murni taila nishevaram gatrasya udvartanam teva hitam samahanancha shali godhumapistana bhakshaihi aikshava samskritaihi भोजनं मधुरं स्निग्धं क्षीरमांसरसादिभिः रसैः बिलैषयाणां च मिष्टिराणां तथैव च द्राक्षा सीता इक्षु द्रव्याणाम् उपयोगो भवेन्निशि शयन आसनयानानि मनोज्ञानि मृदूनि च निद्रानाशेतु कुर्वीत तथा अन्यान्यपि बुद्धिमान्. The insomnia, loss of sleep, can occur due to vata or pittaja vyadi or manastapat, stress, psychological stress, or abhigata, trauma, injury, painful conditions. And in such conditions, you take the preventive steps to reduce the doshas. Anila vata pitta doshas can be reduced or managed with the specific yogas, or certain specific techniques of inducing the sleep are ಒಂದು ಮೂರ್ತಿ ತೈಲ ನಿಷೇವಣ or udvartana or samvahana, or then the food which would have more sweet contents. Aikshava samskrita is the food which is processed with the products of sugar cane, sugar and jaggery and so on, or mansarasa specific, or drakshasita etc. As well as the environment, like a pleasant room and very comfortable bed. These are all the choices which you can do for treating for the insomnia conditions. Nitrati yoga vamana hitam samshodhananja Langhanam Raktamamshasya Manovyaklanani cha. If there is a excess of sleep, those who have persistent sleep conditions, in that Vamana is suggested, or other Shodhana, Langhana, Raktamamshana, as well as factors which can affect the psychological status, which make you somewhat aggressive, they are suggested. Then Kapameda Vishartanam Ratho Jagaranam Hitam. If a person has a Kapadavadhi or Visha, in that condition, Ratro Jagaranam Hitam should not be allowed to sleep at night, which is supposed to be beneficial. Divasupna Shatru Shula Hikka Ajirna Atisaranam. It's a short repetition. Patient who have Trutru Shula etc. Ajirna Divaswapa is indicated. Indriyartheshu asamprapti gauram jirmbadam klamaha nidrarthasya tasya nidra tandra metisheta. Now, certain other abnormalities of the sleep are, one is the tandra, feeling like sleepishness, which often occurs in the educational institution during classroom, where the person would be having that yawning and feeling of this klamaha, that tiredness, and indriya tesha samprapti, not able to grasp anything, heaviness in the body, that's called as tandra. Now, from the current science point of view, current dealing point of view, sleep disorders, they are identified and they are coded based upon the sleep disorders which are classified according to the ICD codes, and the ICD codes are mentioned like insomnia, hypersomnia, circadian rhythm sleep disorders, sleep apnea, etc. These are mentioned as the abnormalities of the sleep and sleep disorders. Now, some more of the issues related to sleep is jimbha, the yawning, which is a sign of your preference for the sleep. The jimbha is mentioned like pitva ekam anilotchasam udvestan vibritanaha yam munchati sanetrasam sajimbha iti samyataha. Yawning is described as a muscular activity where you will be having a deep inspiration followed by opening of the mouth and then a expiration as such. Now, present day situation, the real cause for the yawning is not known, but as far as the physiology of yawning is concerned, the relationship between that muscles and the respiratory structures as well as the centers of the brain, the yawning center also now is identified as such. So physiology is well studied, but why the yawning occurs is not known. There are many hypotheses, and the important three hypotheses which justifies, which are related to the yawning, are oxygen concentration hypothesis. That's when the body oxygen concentration is reduced and there is accumulation of carbon dioxide, it induces yawning. And then if you are feeling sleepy, to make you aroused, that it's a arousal hypothesis. To avoid sleep, yawning is one of the reflex activity of the body. When somebody yawns, then the persons who nearby also would have a tendency for the yawning. Now, this is suggested by a communication hypothesis, social communication hypothesis. That's if one feels that he is bored and then he is not liking that environment, the others also have to feel the same, and this is sort of communication. This is about the different type of hypothesis about the yawning. Then yo anayasa shramodehe prabuddha shwasavarjitah klamah saidi vijnayah indriyartha prabhadakah. Now, the other physical abnormalities which can be related to the sleep somewhat indirectly are klamah, tiredness. Now, tiredness defined by Sushruta is anayasa shramaha, a person who feeling tired without really doing any physical activities and without the dyspnea. That's called as a klama. And it's indriyartha prabhadaka. It can affect the perception of the senses. Then sukha sparsha prasangitvam dukha dveshana lolata shaktasya shapi anutsaha karmasu alasya mityate. Alasya, lethargy, is a tendency to be comfortable, prefer comfort and avoid stress. And even though you have the ability, you do not have that energy to do the work. That energylessness is the lethargy as such. Then utkrishya annam nanikchet praseka stevaneritam hridayam pete tasya tam utklesham vinirdishayat vaktre madhurata tantra hridayas preshtanam brahmaha sa annam abhikamshena glanim tasya vinirdishayat. Then utklesha and the glani, these are the two other varieties of the symptoms which could be related to the sleep disorders, and they are in a utklesha, the patient would have a feeling of compression in the chest or discomfort in the chest after having the food, and salivation, but still there is no vomiting. That kind of salivation feeling and discomfort in the abdomen also could be attributed to the abnormality of the sleep. And vaktre cha madhuratatantra hridayadrishtanam brahmaha, annam abhikaksheta glanim. A person may have a urge for having the food, but there is a sweetish odor in the mouth and doesn't like the food, and discomfort in the chest is called as glani. So klesha, glani, klama and alasya, these are defined to the best extent, and these definitions are absolutely valid. Then another is the gaurava. Gaurava is described as Ardha Charmavanadham Yu Gatram Nandite Naraha Tata Guru Shiro Atyartam Garvam Tadvinit Disheta. Gaurava is often we use the word heaviness, but Sushruta has defined a feeling as if your body is covered with a cold skin or moist skin, and you have a heaviness in the head. That's considered as a gaurava. Now these are very perfect descriptions of the different symptoms as such. Then murcha pitta samapraya raja pitta nilada brahmaha tamo vata kapha tandra nidra shleshma tamo bhava. The murcha, unconsciousness, is produced due to pitta and tamo guda, and with the rajas and pitta, the brahmaha, giddiness, would be produced. Tamo vata kapha, when there is tama vata and kapha, it produces tandra, that sleepishness. Nidra shleshma tamo bhava, you will have a sleep when there is a shleshma and tamas acid. Now, garbhasya tu rasanimittaha maruta adhana nimitta cha parivriddhir. The other physical development of the body, the organs of the body, they are related to the rasa and martha adhana, the movement of the vata in between. The same is described again. Tasya antarena nabhyastu jyotisthanam somstam tada adhamati vatastu deha tena asya vardhate ushma sahitaschapi dharayatyasya martha urdhvam tiryak adhasthacha sotamsi api tatha tata. Now, differential growth of the different organs. Now, we attribute, in the current embryology, we attribute it to the differential growth. That rate of growth of individual tissue is different, and based upon that you have all that modifications, curvatures and so on. So when some area would have a faster growth of the tissue, that area tends to get curved, and when there is a lesser growth of the tissue, that area becomes again somewhat depressed, and this is how the different shape of the body is formed. Like initially the body is formed when these three germinal cell layers, they get folded, it's a straight structure. But when the component of the head portion is growing rapidly, it tends to bend forwards and the neck is formed. That's how it is seen. Now in the current embryology, we describe it to the differential growth. Whereas Sushruta has attributed this kind of differentiation of the organs due to the movement of the vata in between the different dhatus and the jyoti, the thermal energy, the pitta, which is presented over that. Vata and the pitta, they will form that different cavities and organs of the body. Drishtischa romakupascha namardhante kadachat dhruvan yatani martyanam iti dhanvantarer matam. The eyes and the hairs, follicles, they do not grow beyond after the delivery. Whatever the size is seen at the time of the full term birth, the same would be remaining till the whole life. Now, of course, it's a bit controversial issue, whether it's true or not, still questionable, but most possibly this is true. The size of the eye lobe doesn't change much. It's not that it doesn't change at all. It does change, but compared to other organs of the body, the size of the eyeballs doesn't change much. But whereas the concept now is, we have a different sort of the concept now. The stable cells, labile cells and semi-labile cells. There are certain tissues of the body where further growth doesn't occur, which we call as the stable cells, like nerve cells. Nerve cells, as per the current concept, the number of nerve cells presented present at the time of the birth would be the same. There will be no new formation of the nerve cells. But the regeneration of the nerve after the damage is another issue, which is a very recent development, which we have referred to in the previous session also. Previous session there was a question about that. But in general, the total number of nerve cells we have is almost the same till the end of the life. It doesn't increase, it doesn't grow as such. That's what we call as stable cells. So, navardhante kadachana, that those organs which do not grow, that kind of a perception is there, but the real description, what we see is something different. We attribute it to the nerves, whereas the cells like gastrointestinal tract, skin, and so on, bone marrow, they are labile cells. They grow very rapidly. There will be continuous mitotic activity throughout the life, and hence this kind of a perception is important. Sushruta has attributed it to the specific organ like drishti and romakupa, which may not be absolutely the same as we perceive it now. And the reason given by Sushruta is Sharire Kshyamanayati Vardayate Dhavimo Sada Swabhavam Praktim Pritvanaka Kesha Vidistiti Nakha and the Kesha, they tend to grow by their own tendency irrespective of the nourishment of the body. Then comes the Prakriti. Now we will have that description of the Prakriti in the next session. We will stop today, and if there are any questions, I will try to answer and then conclude. Yeah, there is one question. If a person becomes Satmya 2 of Ratri Jagarana and Divasopna, as we see in many professions, will it cause? Of course, this is very clearly clarified by Sushruta. Sushruta has given that clarification. I think we have referred to that part clearly. If it becomes Satmya, then it doesn't affect. It can be considered as a healthy issue. That's already clear. Sushruta has given that clarification. But in general, that cyclical pattern, that rhythm, biological rhythm has to be maintained, which will be healthy. Right. That's the question. No more questions. So, okay, we will wind up today. Thank you.
Thank you.